Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today we are using just a little sneak peek of our upcoming release. I am using the Lovely Layers Fire Pit, and then for my sentiment I am using Rest and Relaxation, the Stamps and Dies. So I thought that it would be kind of a fun idea to look at just using this on its own. Obviously it can be combined with a lot of different things and I have a lot of ideas for it. But I did want to show how you could just use it by itself and still have a card that feels complete. So I've laid everything out on white cardstock. I'm using Nina 80-pound solar white cardstock for all of this, and I'm going to cut it out twice because I'm basically going to make two of the same card. They're just going to have different sentiments, but one is going to be using Distress Inks and one is going to be using Distress Oxides. I know the the Honeybee gang likes to use more oxides, where I prefer more Distress Inks, so I thought it would be nice to kind of show both of them. And we're going to be talking about blending for like a sunset sky that kind of fades up. And then we're going to do all our coloring with ink blending today. I'm not going to be using any markers, which is wild for me, but I know how much I love this just with using the ink blending. So I'm positive that once I'm able to get some markers on it, that I'll be able to, really play around with it and have it look really, really dimensional. But because Honeybee does such a good job with doing the embossing and all of the different like detail layers, they already look really great without kind of anything too extra added to them. Here what I'm doing is I'm taking the largest die cut from the fire pit and I laid it down on my cardstock so I could find my horizon line. And then I used, because you guys know I'm a cheap chicken, the tape that I used to hold my dies in place for my die cutting, I also used to do my horizon line. If you don't have low-tack tape, like this pixie tape here, you could also use the Scotch Post-it. It's like a 1 inch on a roll or 3/4 of an inch or something, and that works great as well. So for the ink blending, I am starting with my Distress Inks, and I am using Mustard Seed, Carved Pumpkin, Picked Raspberry, Wilted Violet, Salty Ocean, Chip Sapphire, and Black Soot. So basically it's going to go from a bright yellow at the horizon up to like a navy blue at the sky. So like sun is setting and we're, getting ready to sit outside with our fire pit or our little campfire. And with the Distress Inks, you can see how light they are here, which, hey, if you're going for like a pastel sky look, you could just do this and you could stop right here. But because I like really saturated color, I always do mine twice. And I think that this is where like a lot of people who are like, well, oxides blend easier than Distress Inks probably struggle, is because if you do it twice, they look almost identical with color saturation. The inks are just a bit brighter, but if you only do it once, it is kind of splotchy and like thin and not deeply saturated. So I have found doing it twice, going kind of like, in this case, from my lightest to my darkest color and my darkest back to my lightest, that is what works for me to have a really nice, bright blend. But you can achieve that with the oxides. The finished look is just a bit more muted. And if you guys watch my channel, you know I love all the bright colors, so I'm sure it would surprise nobody that I have a tendency to lean more towards the Distress Inks. But the other thing with ink blending, and this is true of ink blending in general, not just Distress Inks, the last color that you use is kind of the one that sits on top and becomes the most prevalent, so that when you see me go back in with my pink between the orange and the purple, that's what I was doing. And I do also want to note too that this is sped up because the ink blending does take a little bit of time. So I have sped this up just a little bit. I don't ink blend this fast. So with the Distress Oxides, we're doing the same thing. We're starting from the lightest color and going out to the darkest. But you'll notice kind of as I'm working through the colors that I am kind of going back in with the previous color to help it blend. So I do mine twice with the Distress Oxides as well, but I'm also kind of blending as I go, as I move through them. And it's not because the formula doesn't lay down well. You can see even with like the first one, like the first pass through, the color is really saturated. It's more because of the pigment properties, it is more challenging to marry different color families. So because of that, I do find myself kind of going back and working them a little bit more, but that doesn't mean, that they're not doing what I need them to do. I just have to have a different approach than I do if if I'm doing the Distress inks. I had to take a little break. You guys could probably hear her in the background with her single little barks. My old girl, my Molly, has decided she needs to be chaperoned everywhere. She needs an escort. So if she is upstairs, she needs to be escorted downstairs. If she is going out to go potty, she needs to be escorted off of the deck. And so when somebody is not getting to her as fast as she would like, she does this little single bark, waits a few seconds, and then does it again. And it's basically driving me insane. So anyway, the one on the right is the Oxides. The one on the left is the Distress Inks. And then I am going to do kind of like I certainly wouldn't call it like a beach scene. It's kind of like a brownish green bottom, because obviously you wouldn't want to have your fire pit surrounded by anything that's going to be flammable. In order to do that, I just flipped that tape around so that it is now blocking the sky from the ink blending that I'm going to do on the bottom. But something to note with this is these types of tapes, these low-tack tapes, do not stick well to wet ink. And so because we put down 2 layers of ink, it can be challenging to get the tape to stick onto the paper. And that is part of the reason why I wrap them around the back. I make the tapes longer than they need to be, and I wrap them around the back to help hold them in place. The other thing to note is you will also, the ink can sit on top of those tapes because they're not porous. So that means they're not going to absorb them. So when you're doing your ink blending, you can pick up those colors, but also you can pick them up on your hand just by setting them down there. So if you're worried about that, you absolutely could get a new piece of tape, but because I am cheap, I just make note to not touch anything else. So basically, I'm just adding some, browns and a little bit of green around the edges, so that I was trying to go for more of like a glowing halo effect, but I was too heavy-handed with them, and that's the case for both of them, both the inks and the oxides. Now, if I was using my markers, I would have went in and put a little bit more of a shadow underneath the fire pit, but since I wanted to stick to just ink blending for these cards, because I know, we're all on different art journeys, so not everybody is going to use markers or, those things. So I do sometimes like to mix in some different ones that will allow you to do the technique, whether you have the products that I have or not. So one thing to note with this, also the oxides, you'll see that that's much more green, and the green sits on top more because, again, those oxides are a bit more challenging to blend them into another color family. So here I have a grip mat. There's a bunch. I have a sticky mat from All To New. This one happens to be from scrapbook.com. And basically I've just laid all of my die cuts out. I've stuck them down to the grip mat. And then I'm going in and inking up the die cuts. I decided for the actual fire pit to go with hickory smoke. And then I'm going to add some shading with the black soot. And then the there's like these, they're so adorable. There's a little thing in here for the fire pit that has the s'mores, like that you can make the s'mores, and then also just the little marshmallows on the stick. I decided to go with just the marshmallows on the stick for this one, but here you can see on the lowest level of the fire pit, I am adding that black shading to the bottom. This is going to be the furthest away from the light. Then the next one up, I am adding shading still with the black soot, but not as heavy. And then for the third one, the same thing. I'm going to add probably about the same amount of shading as I did on the second, but I'm also going to add it on the very tippy top to help give it a little bit more dimension. The inside of the fire pit, we are going to add shading actually with our fire colors. Because that is going to make more sense. If the fire was glowing inside the fire pit, it would, you know, that light would be illuminating from there. So the, here I did just add just a smidge of shading to the actual marshmallows themselves. And then for the wood, I am using some browns. There's 3 large pieces to the wood and then one kind of accent piece. So you have like the full, what is that? What do they call that? Like a pylon? What do they call that? I can't remember. A pyre? I don't know. I feel like I have read enough books that I should know what that's called, but I don't know what it is. But anyway, so then there's another layer for 2 pieces of wood, and then there's a top layer, and that top layer also has a little light kind of cut edge. So we're adding all the shading to those. And then for our fire colors, we're going to use the same yellow and orange combination that we used for our sunset. And then the only other color that we're going to add is crackling campfire, because that's fitting, right? But you could go out as, you know, you could go out to a darker red if you don't have that color, or you could shade, you know, over the orange with like a pink to help create a deeper orange color if you don't have all of the colors available. I know I'm using a lot of them, but it's because early on in my card making career, this is what I invested in. I invested in purchasing all of the Distress inks because they would do the techniques that I wanted, and I would be able to do regular, just, you know, good old-fashioned ink blending with them. So that's why I have so many colors. Then for the marshmallow sticks, I just kept it nice and simple, just use one brown color for that. And now these come together so easy. You just stack them right on top of each other. So it creates like this 3-tier fire pit, and then you can see the inside texture as well. For the wood, I told you there's the base piece, which does have embossed areas on the back. And then the 2 that are connected, and then there's a third one that goes on top. So it has lots of nice dimension. This little teeny tiny cut piece is the part that goes on the bottom, and then that goes into our little fire pit. And then for the actual fire itself, it has 3 layers, 3 stacking layers. But then can you see those little baby flames? This is something that is such a, I mean, it's such a detailed thing, because it allows you to recreate the image of like the fire like licking up, like the fire's kind of, you know, like dancing up, because of those little teeny tiny pieces. Something else to note here with the marshmallows, there is a small slit that's cut at the bottom so you can slide the stick in. I opened the hole with my tweezers, and then I did find it easier to do it with my die cutting tool. So I used that. I left it in here so that you could see. That one's just, it made it easier to do. So anyway, back to that little detail, like this is something that's so well thought out that yes, they're like, as somebody who struggles with the teeny tiny pieces of dies, I'm like, why? But then once I put it together with my card, I was like, oh yeah, that's great. Like that is such a little added detail thing that I totally love and enjoy. when I'm putting together like a scene. So now here we're doing the Distress Oxides. I'm doing everything the same as far as the shading and things. Nothing's different. I'm just doing one in inks and one in oxides. So you might be asking yourself, Kelly, where can I get this fire pit? Well, it's a sneak peek, so you can't get it yet. But this whole week is filled with sneak peeks, which I think is super fun. So the fire pit and the rest of the release will be available on Friday, which is the 27th, and we're going to have a little live release party. And then we will, after the release party, everything will be available for purchase. So, we always try to let you know the theme, the name, they always have a name. The name of this one is very cute. It's Sawdust and Saddles, which I think is adorable. So this is part of that release. And like I said, it'll be available on Friday. The sentiments are older. They're available now if you're so interested in purchasing those. But I just think that this is like a really great way to, see that whether you have the inks or the oxides, you can still get really pretty results. And again, you can go in with colored pencils, with markers, with, whatever it is that kind of floats your boat and add further dimension. But even if you're a person who is not there yet in your card making, or maybe you don't have a desire to, like you're like, I'm perfectly happy with ink blending, or maybe you don't have the mobility to do it anymore. You can still get a really pretty result just with the ink blending. I didn't use them today because I have the background blender brushes from Honeybee, and then I also have the detail ones. Those are the ones that I used today, and that was sufficient for me. But if you wanted to get into like the little nooks and crannies, they do have the Belux detail brushes, and they have a 5, a 7, and a 10, I think. If you follow Dawn Woolslagel and you've seen the video she's done for Honeybee, she has done amazing work with those little detail brushes. So I would highly recommend checking out her stuff because, she's endlessly talented anyway, but especially if you're looking to add shading with ink blending, she's great at it. I don't have the patience to do what she does. So for my sentiment, I stamped them on black using our brilliant white pigment ink, and then I am heat setting them in a white detail powder. I'm going to go ahead and cut these out with their coordinating dies. And then here's the extra added things that you guys know I can't help myself from doing because I just enjoy all the little added details. So I am going to first spatter on a little bit of just clean water. And I will say, you can see it on the Distress ink side, but you can really see it on the oxides. That bleaching technique is so much more noticeable on the oxides. I have another technique with that. I should do that. I haven't done it in a long time. So maybe we'll circle back around to that in another video. But then I also wanted to create the look of stars and at the top because night is starting to fall. So I wanted, to see those little first winks of stars. So I am using some white acrylic. This one I think is the pre-mixed, but you could just use white acrylic paint mixed with a little bit of water. If you don't want large splatters, make sure you tap off your brush a couple of times first before you bring it to the paper, because as you go, with the spatters, once you have less product on there, they do get smaller and more star-like. So then with that, once I have that done, then I'm going to go ahead and glue my fire pits down. And then I'm going to further add even more because I have no control. I'm going to add even more stuff. So last night, my husband and I, and it's been a really long time since we have been able to do that. We're in a heat wave, so it was a really nice outside last night. And So we sat outside. Our umbrella has lights in it, and we inherited it from the previous owners of this house. But it is super cool. And we lit some citronella candles, and we sat outside and played cards and chit chatted and listened to some music after, it was bedtime for the kids. And it was really nice. It was really nice to sit outside and spend time together. And our oldest, he loves a campfire. We do have a fire pit. We don't have fires nearly as often as he would like. But so since we know this year we're going to have more, kind of staycation type options, I'm sure having a fire out back will be on his list of things to do. And like, if you have somebody in your family who like loves camping or, Boy Scouts or anything like that, I think this is a really great way to make a card for them. So here I'm using Perfect Pearls to create shiny stars in the sky, with the Perfect Pearls in the color Perfect Pearl. And then with the gold, I am using it to kind of create those little like snaps and pops of fire that kind of float around. And then in addition, I'm also going to use that gold to kind of paint the edges of some of the flames on the different layers. And I'm also going to paint around the edge of the fire pit. So that way when the light is catching that card, it will glow and it will shimmer. So those are just a little bit of extra added things that you can do. You could also use glitter, like if you have some, gold glitter or clear glitter that will turn whatever. Like I use Stardusticles because it uses whatever the colors in the background, that's the color it turns. So now once I have these put together, and you'll notice I did trim them, they were feeling very wide. Like we had this large expanse of sky and just the fire pit at the bottom. And so they were feeling very wide, and like I had a lot of open space. In order to make it feel more balanced, I trimmed off the edges. So I trimmed 1/4 off of each side, and then I am putting it on a mat that is just 1/8 of an inch larger. And then I'm going to mat it onto my white card back. And this is going to help us to, to focus on the center. And so that way the sunset and the fire are the focal point, and everything is very nice in balance with each other. And it's not looking like we put wide stripes on something, because horizontal stripes make everything look wider, which is probably why I don't own any of them. Anyway, so here then for this, I did one that says seize the day and the other one that says here's to kicking back. Either one of these, you could do birthday sentiments on the inside, or like retirement. If you have somebody heading into retirement, I think that would be really fun. I cannot get enough of these rainbow rhinestones. I use them on everything now. But here is a look at them. I think they came out totally adorable. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and for spending your time with me. I always appreciate you. And I will catch you on the next video. Bye.